String objects are not compatible with the standard relational operators. The primary method used to compare strings is the compare-to method. Let's look at how this method is used to compare strings for equality and for sorting purposes. There are two primary methods we use to do comparisons in Java on strings: equals and compare-to. We're going to look at both of those, then talk about what's wrong with the equality operator. So I'll start off with one string. Let's create a second string. Then we can compare the two strings, and it doesn't matter which order I do it in, using the equals operator. I'm going to make a very terse output here. Oops, there we go. So when we run this program, we get exactly what we think we should get, the same. Let's modify string 2 by adding a space to it. And then, of course, they're different. Let's modify string 1 by putting the second letter in capital letters. Different. Exactly what we would expect. Now, we can also use a method called equals ignore case. A lot of times, you're not really worried about the capitalization of the word as to see if they really mean the same thing. Even though capital J, capital A, VA is not equal to capital J, lowercase a, VA in the usual sense, they still convey the same information. So in a way, we could say they're equal. And we can compare that by using equals ignore case. When we run this, we get the same. You can use equals ignore case when you're not worried about the fact that some letters may be in uppercase and other in lowercase. Now, I said we were going to talk a little bit about the equality operator. Let's spend a minute with that. Let's change our condition of our if statement to read S2 equal S1, and then let's run the code. And so you see here that they are the same. So the equality operator works. Now let's try this a little bit different. Let's change this now, rather than use a literal, we call the constructor for string and pass in the S1 object. Now when we do a comparison using equals, we get different because they're not the same object. They're different objects. So while they hold the same data, they're different objects. So that's why you have to be very, very careful when you use the equality operator with string objects. All right, let's go back to the original version. Except we're going to change it a little bit. Now let's look at compare to. Compare to returns a value based on whether or not the invoking string is less than, equal to, or greater than the passed in string. So what I'm going to do is let's get rid of the if-else statement. Let's just do a series of system out print lines. Like that. So let's run the code. So our result is 0 for the first comparison. That means the two strings are equal. S1 compared to S2 means they're the same. Let's modify S2 by making a lowercase j. Now when we run the code, we get negative 32. That means the invoking string is less than the passed-in string. So S1 is less than S2. Let's try it like this. And now we get a positive 32. That means that the invoking string is greater than the passed-in string. Now let's try a little different comparison. -1, which means that apple is less than banana. Just exactly what you thought. Now let's change banana. Couldn't think of another fruit that began with an A that was less than apple. So let's compare apples and aardvarks. And now we get a 15. Because the invoking string is greater than, because AP is greater than AA. It's called the lexicographic order. So the two A's are the same, and then the P in apple, the first P, is greater than the second A in aardvark. So that's how the compare to operator works. And we use that for sorting and lots of more fine-grained comparisons. So to summarize, we have the equals method, equals ignore case, and compare to, and be very careful when you try to use the equality operator because it doesn't work very well with string objects.